Welcome to a revision video for the Eduqas GCSE Judaism paper. In this video, I will take you through the key terms and a number of mind maps to help you with your revision and preparation for the exam. Here are the key terms for the Jewish paper. There are only these 8, so you only need to ensure that you know these terms, and they will potentially crop up as other exam questions. Covenant is the agreement between God and his people. Kosher means fit and proper. Messiah is the anointed one. Mitzvah are the rules that Jews follow. Shabbat is the Jewish day of rest. Shekinah is God's presence on earth. Synagogue is the Jewish place of worship. And Torah is the Jewish holy book. Ensure that you know what these key terms are, not only for the 2 markers, but also because they can be used as 5 and 8 mark questions as well. On this mind map, you can see the nature of God. The exam board are going to require you to be able to talk about God as one, God as creator, God as lawgiver, and God as judge. And you can see within the mind map the key sources of wisdom that you want to use. So do spend some time ensuring that you can talk about Genesis 1, the 10 Commandments, the laws of Moses, as well as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You've also got Shekinah there, which, as well as being one of the key terms, is an element of the nature of God and how Jews understand and access that nature of God today, to be able to talk about both Shekinah in the story of Moses, but also in terms of the significance regarding the Western Wall in Jerusalem. With the Messiah, the key thing is to remember not to talk about Jesus, because you're not going to get any marks for him. You've got the Reformed Jewish viewpoint where they don't believe in the Messiah because he's not in the Torah, therefore there's no need to believe in him, and instead they focus just on living a good life on earth in the moment that they are in. You've got the Orthodox Jews who, although there is no mention of the Messiah in the Torah, they can see links within the Torah which point to the Messiah, and also it is included within the writings of Maimonides. Orthodox Jews believe that the Messiah, among other things, will restore Israel and restore the temple, and that he will bring peace to the world. It's worth noting that the Messiah will only be a human being. He will be a great human political leader rather than a divine being like he is within Christianity. The prophet Micah gives a very secure source of wisdom, so maybe spend a little bit of time looking at what the prophet Micah has to say about the Messiah in your revision. Again, you want to maybe be talking about the Messianic age as well. So this is a time of peace when God's rule is on earth. Again, you've got a bit of flexibility within the Orthodox tradition. Is that going to be in the present day? So is the Messiah going to arrive and make himself known in 2025 and the Messianic age start? Or is the Messianic age an analogy for what will come after death? With covenants, you need to be certain that you're talking about that agreement between God and his people, and that ultimately what you have got is a very clear understanding of Abraham. So God promises Abraham a land, God promises Abraham descendants, and in return, the Jews show they are faithful to God through circumcision. With Moses, you only need to talk about Mount Sinai. So God provides the 10 Commandments and promises to be the Jewish people's God, to be their protector, as long as the Jewish people follow the commands of God and they follow the law. So you need to just be able to talk fairly successfully, fairly detailed about the impact of the mitzvah on how Jews live their lives. With mitzvah, again, you've got to be clear that what the key term refers to. With the Orthodox Jewish viewpoint, you've got to be really, really clear that Jews are going to follow all 613 if they're Orthodox. But again, just be aware for evaluation that some of them cannot be followed today. Some only apply to the temple, that obviously no longer exists, and most actually only apply to men. You're going to talk about the 613 mitzvah, give examples around kosher food rules, observances within festivals, the way in which Jews will celebrate and observe Shabbat. Reformed Jews aren't going to believe that they're going to follow all of them. They believe that some need updating, but that the vast majority need to be ignored because you can't follow them anyway. You've got to be able to include within that discussion about Pikuach Nefesh, so that belief there that Jews can break 610 and the 613 in order to save a life. The only three mitzvahs that can not be broken are idolatry, incest, and adultery. Be prepared for that individual question on Pikuach Nefesh, because you're not going to have a lot of room to maneuver. You're going to have to be laser focused within the responses. Sanctity of life, although quite a small part of the spec, can be a bit tricky. You need to be really certain in your revision that all of the foundation for sanctity of life in Judaism is based on Genesis 1. So Jews believe that all life is sacred because, number one, humans are made by God. Number two, humans are made in God's image. And number three, humans are the pinnacle of creation, and therefore the most important. So you need to be able to use reference to Genesis 1 in that answer. Realistically, the exam board aren't going to talk to you or ask you a question about euthanasia, but you might want to be able to use it as an example to help develop an answer on sanctity of life. So obviously Jews are going to be against it because only God has the right to end our life, and ultimately it devalues human life. So quite a tricky little topic because there's not a lot to talk about. So again, with your revision, you've got to be laser focused and be really secure on your quotes from Genesis 1. With life after death, you've got a variety of ways to look at this. So you need to be certain about what Jews believe the soul is, and they believe that it is God-given and that it is immortal, so therefore it is the thing which survives death. That being said, Reformed Jews don't really believe in a life after death. They don't really believe in the Messianic age. They've got no interest in it because ultimately, why would they? Because they don't believe in following the mitzvah, so they wouldn't want to believe in a life after death where they're going to be judged based on their ability to follow some rules, which they pre-select to not follow anyway. You're going to want to be able to talk about the Jewish use of free will and the understanding of free will, and that all Jews are born with the ability to do good, Yetzer Hatov, and the ability to do bad, Yetzer Hara. So be clear in your ability to talk about those, and understand again that you need to bring this back to the nature of God, particularly God as judge, because when God judges us, we're going to move into that Halam Haba, which is the afterlife, and we're either going to go to heaven, which is Gan Eden, or we're going to go to hell, which is Gehenna. So again, just be really clear and really secure on which way round those function. And again, Orthodox Jews are going to be the ones that are going to be concerned about this because, firstly, they believe in the resurrection of the body, and that is linked to the Messianic age. They believe that they're going to go to Gehenna based on following the mitzvah. They believe that there is judgment at death and or judgment when the Messiah arrives. So that point 3 and point 4 that you can see on the screen, there is a bit of wiggle there should it come up as an evaluation question where you can potentially use different Orthodox Jewish viewpoints against each other, because some Orthodox Jews believe that judgment comes at death, others believe that they will remain in the grave until the Messiah comes and then they will be judged. So you've got to be precise, but there is a little bit of difference there that you can explore and talk about in your answer. Onto the practical side of things now. So synagogues. Now this covers a wide range of areas. You've got to be clear with the difference between the Orthodox and Reform synagogues. So Orthodox, 10 men form a minyan. Reform, any combination of men and women. Orthodox, men and women are going to sit separately. Reform, they're going to sit together. Orthodox, it's going to be in Hebrew. Reform, it can be in English and Hebrew or just in English. Reform, they're probably only going to go on Shabbat. Orthodox, Jewish men are going to go every single day. And on Shabbat, they're going to be there Friday, sunset, Saturday morning, all the way up to Saturday sunset. Now, when a Jew prays in a synagogue, they are going to pray the Amidah prayer, and Amidah means standing, so it is the main significant prayer that a Jew prays, and they're going to pray the Shema prayer, which states the oneness of God. You're going to also want to be able to talk about the clothing that Jews wear, so the kippah, which is worn on the head of the Jewish man, the talit, which is the prayer shawl, and the tefillin, which is the box of scripture that is tied to the man's forehead and his left bicep. Again, it's worth noting that the tefillin is worn every day except Shabbat, So ensure with your revision that you can talk about those three items of clothing and their significance to a Jewish person, particularly an Orthodox Jewish man's way of experiencing God and prayer. With features of prayer, the vast majority of this is going to be regarding the synagogue. So you can talk about what Jewish men wear, which we just looked at. You can talk about prayer during Shabbat, which you can see on the screen as well. If you've got a question about the features of a synagogue, there are lots you could talk about. I would focus on the three that kind of interlink. So the Ark, which is where the Torah scrolls are kept, Torah scrolls themselves, and then the Bema, which is where the Torah scrolls are read from. Because you've got that nice kind of fluid link from one to the other to the final one, to be able to talk about the significance of the Word of God and God's presence within the synagogue. Obviously, you've got the use of the synagogue as well, the way in which a synagogue is used as a house of prayer, as a house of study, and as a house of assembly. So again, you should be able to exemplify that, be able to explain how and why Jews pray, how and why Jews study, and how they join together in celebration. In terms of worship at home and prayer at home, realistically, you're only going to want to be talking about the mezuzah, the Siddur prayer book, and the push box. If you're an Orthodox Jew, you're going to have all of those in your house, but you're probably going to be praying in the synagogue more often than not. If you're a Reformed Jew, you might have them, you might not necessarily use them. So again, I would be leaning towards, in my revision, making sure that I'm really secure how Jews pray in the synagogue, how Jews pray during Shabbat, and how Jews use that synagogue as their sacred space to express their faith and their beliefs in God. With rituals, there are a couple of oddities. So the exam board put holy books within rituals along with kosher food. Just be secure in what the books are. So the Tanakh is the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, which is the law, the prophets, and the history. The Talmud is the commentary on the Tanakh. So a more modern interpretation, although it's written in the 2nd and 3rd century. Kosher food rules, again, just be really clear on what they are. Fairly straightforward. I would always stick with the obvious ones. Not mixing meat and dairy, not eating fish that don't have scales and fins, because otherwise you fall down a rabbit hole of talking about weird and wonderful concoctions that Jews can or cannot eat. The main rituals are Brit Milah, Bar and Bat Mitzvah and marriage. As you can see there, when you're talking about Brit Milah, you're going to want to be linking it back to the Abrahamic covenant. You're going to want to be giving details around the fact that it happened when the Jewish boy is 8 days old. It's when he is given his name, and it's carried out by a Mohel. Bar and Bat Mitzvah, you want to talk about the fact that it relates to the boy becoming the son of the commandments, or the girl becoming a daughter of the commandments. The boy within the Orthodox tradition is going to read a Torah portion. The girl will read a poem in Hebrew. If it's a Reform Bar and Bat Mitzvah, both would read from the Torah. It means that those children are no longer children. They are responsible for their own actions. So if they break the mitzvah, they are going to have to deal with the consequences of that. Within marriage, there's a wide variety of things you could talk about. I've put 3 up there on the screen that for me are probably the easiest 3 to talk about, and they kind of run sequentially. You've got the main ceremony with the huppah, you've got the exchanging of rings, and you've got the breaking of glass. You could talk about the signing of the contract. You could talk about the circling of the bride and the groom. You could talk about the deacon when he puts the groom puts the veil over the bride's face. There's lots of things you could talk about, but in your revision, pick the 2 or 3 things that you are comfortable and confident about using, and ensure that you know what you're talking about, but for which ritual, and that you don't get them confused. Funerals is a slight odd one on the spec, because actually the vast majority of what you talk about isn't actually the funeral. So you need to talk about the Shevra Kadisha, which is the burial society. They arrange the funeral and they prepare the body. And again, you can go into quite a little bit of detail about how they prepare the body if you so wish. Within the Shevra Kadisha, you've got the Onan, who is the main mourner. They're the person who takes charge of the burial. They're the person that never leaves the deceased person's side. They're present from the moment they're called to the moment that the funeral begins. The burial is done as quickly as possible after death, normally within 3 days. Very simple. few psalms are sung, a few prayers are said, and the body is laid to rest. The main focus of the funeral is actually afterwards, and the family will sit shiva. Shiva means 7, so it's 7 days of mourning, where the community come and support them. So the family won't cook for themselves. People will come and look after them. If they run a business, the community will run that business for them. They will cover their mirrors. They won't listen to music. They will rip their clothes. They won't wash with perfume and soap. It's an opportunity for that family to be really, really mournful for the passing of that loved one. So funerals, like I say, is a bit of an odd one in that the answer doesn't actually talk about the funeral. It's the what comes before it and the what comes after it, which is the main significant part of the answer. Festivals, again, you could go into loads and loads of detail with your revision, but just be really tight with what it is you're going to talk about. So Sukkot, it remembers the time that the Jews were in the wilderness. It's based on the teaching from Leviticus, where they are told to dwell in their huts for 7 days. They're going to build huts. They're going to have an etrog and they're going to have a lulav. So again, be really clear in your revision. Why is it that they build huts? What does the etrog symbolize? What does the lulav symbolize? And just be really clear in that. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year. It begins and ends with the blowing of the shofar horn. Again, if you want to go into detail about each of the blasts of the shofar horn, you're going to get plenty of marks. 2 key things for me would be they eat sweet fruits, or apples dipped in honey, or pomegranates, or the sweet challah bread. Talk about the sweetness of life to symbolize that promise of the new year. And towards the end of the day, they will take part in tashlit, which is the casting away of their sins when they throw breadcrumbs into moving water. They then have the 10 days of returning between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, so it's the one day in the year when the Jews get to say sorry to God for their sins. It's 25 hours of fasting. There are 5 prayer services in the synagogue, and it's, like I say, it's that opportunity for Jews to say sorry for what they have done. It's a very somber, significant event within the Jewish calendar. We've then got Pesach, Passover, which you need to link to the story of Moses. Make sure that you are comfortable with at least 2 or 3 things on the Seder plate and how they link to the 4 questions that are asked by the youngest child during Pesach. Talk about the fact that within a Jewish home they remove all the hametz, which is all of the leavened things. So that will be flour, wheat, yeast, and breadcrumbs, those kind of things. And that they eat unleavened bread because that replicates the food that the Jews ate during the Passover when they were fleeing Egypt, and also the manna that God provided during their time in the desert. Hopefully you found this useful. Best of luck with your exams, and don't forget to like and subscribe.